Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Stacey. This is going to be all the books that I read in the month of July. Again, I'm getting a late start on this. You'd think eventually I would get caught up on things. It's not even like I've been that busy, but yeah, I don't know. Here we are. So the first book that I read in July is actually a recommendation that I got from Mrs. Thomas, who you should totally be following, especially if you love thrillers, cozy mystery type of books. I will leave her channel down below. She is fantastic. I love her. So anyway, we got to chatting in her comments about thriller books. I've really been in the mood for some thrillers for summer. That's just, I think, what people like to read in the summertime for whatever reason. And I wanted to pick up a thriller. So she recommended The Unheard by Nikki French. Now, I've never heard of Nikki French. I've never heard of the book, but she told me that there is something to do with a kid in the book, but not to worry, that like nothing happens to the kid. So that actually was very helpful. So I went into it blind, really not knowing what the book is about. So the book is about this woman who has a 3-year-old daughter, and she shares custody with her ex and the ex's new wife. And after a weekend away at the little girl's father's house, she comes home and she does a drawing of what looks to be a woman falling from a building. So the little girl starts acting weird and saying weird things, just acting very out of character for her personality. And of course, the mom gets very concerned that what if the daughter witnessed something weird while she was away at her dad's house? And so it's this whole mystery thriller thing, trying to figure out what exactly the girl saw, if anything, and if the mom is kind of losing her mind. It was very fast-paced. It was set in England, which I loved. I love British mysteries over a mystery set anywhere else. I really liked how it played out at the end, and I would read more books by Nikki French, so I really appreciate that recommendation by Mrs. Thomas. My dog just got a bone and is chewing off to the side. I hope that isn't too annoying. I feel like there's always animal sounds in the backgrounds of my videos. It's either the dogs or the roosters. I have currently 2 roosters right now. I shouldn't have any. I don't know if I told you guys this, but when I got baby chicks this spring, I got what was supposed to be 5 girls. It said it was all females, but 2 of them turned out to be roosters. So yeah. The next book that I finished was Forged in Love by Mary Connolly. This is a Christian historical fiction set in like Wyoming. I want to say Wyoming, somewhere in that general area. And it is about a woman who survives a stagecoach attack, and in the attack her father and her brother are killed. She's the only survivor, and her closest friends in the town convince her to basically say she has amnesia of the event, so that the people who did the attack don't come back after her to silence her. So she pretends like she doesn't have her memories. She goes back to work. She works as a blacksmith now because that's what her dad and brother were doing. So she takes over the family business. So the book is about trying to figure out who did the attack on the stagecoach, and some other weird things are happening to her. And the man who owns the restaurant in town has a thing for her. That's not a spoiler. That's at the very beginning. So there is like romance in the book, and her best friend sews for a living. She sews like chops and things like that for cowboys. Plot-wise, I thought it was a pretty good plot. Character-wise, the main character kind of drove me crazy. She was very feminist in her ways of thinking about things, and it was very weird in the way that it was written. So like, she had this horrible accident happen to her, and she's, suffering and in pain, and at the same time she's thinking about women's right to vote, and that seems to be like the big thing on her mind. But it's like, girl, you keep getting attacked, you're in pain, your dad just died, your brother just died, and your main concern is the women's right to vote. It just seems so strange the way that was put in there. I also did not like her attitude towards the guy who owns the restaurant. In my opinion, he's about as good as it gets for a male character. He was just so great and so loving and so caring and bending over backwards to do everything to help her. And I felt like she was kind of mean to him. I didn't like her attitude. I really liked her best friend, the lady who sews. And I know that book 2 is her story, so I'm kind of interested in that. But I heard that book 2 also has a lot of the feminist kind of overtone to it, which really isn't my thing. So I don't know if I'm ever going to read that or not. But overall, I gave it 4 stars, mainly because of the main guy character. He not only owned the restaurant in town, but he also loved cooking, and I loved how much he loved cooking. I loved all of the parts where he was, making meals and talking about all of the techniques and stuff that he uses and the ingredients. I just really got into all of that part. So yeah, there are some parts of the book that I really liked a lot, and then some parts not so much. The next book I read was Fragments of Fear by Carrie Stewart Parks. And this is probably my favorite book of the year, and I was kind of shocked by that because I'm not really into contemporary, although it definitely was a thriller, so that's what I was in the mood for. But this book was so perfect. I loved everything about it. The main character gets a phone call from a shelter, and the shelter tells her that they have her dog and she needs to come pick it up or it's going to get euthanized, and she doesn't have a dog. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they say, well, there's a chip in the dog with your information on it, so you need to come get it. So she goes and gets the dog, and in the process of getting the dog, she stumbles upon a murder. And then things happen and she has to go on the run. This book takes place in New Mexico. I love the setting of it. I loved all of the deserty type details that were in this book. I really loved her as a character. I liked the main guy that was in the book. I thought it was wild. It was very fast paced. It kept me on the edge of my seat. I listened to this book and I found myself always wanting to turn it on to see what was happening next. It was fantastic, and I gave it 5 stars. Next one was Egypt's Sister by Angela Hunt. This one I only gave 3 stars. And I was really surprised by that. I thought I was going to love this book. But this book is mainly about the girl who spent her childhood with Cleopatra, grew up together with Cleopatra, and they were best friends. And then Cleopatra turned on her, and I don't want to say too much because that would give spoilers away, but Cleopatra turns on her, and then her life changes in a big way, and some really awful things happen to her. So that is the premise of the story. Some things that I really did not like about this book were the girl. It felt like she was obsessed with Cleopatra, like she had this weird connection thing going on with her, and felt like, she shouldn't get married, shouldn't have a family, because it's her lot in life to take care of the queen. And she was a Hebrew, she was an Egyptian, so it just seemed really odd to me, her kind of obsession with Cleopatra. She also based a lot of things that she did off of this prophecy that she got from God, and I don't really like the way that that was written. I feel like that was kind of putting words into God's mouth. So I just was not a fan. I think it's the first book in a trilogy, and I don't know if I will continue on with that. The next one I read was completely something that I did not think I would like at all, but I was willing to try just because it's an historical mystery, and I love those. And that is Jane and the Year Without a Summer by Stephanie Barron. Now, my really good friends on here know that I don't like Jane Austen. I am not a Jane Austen fan, and I know that that is taboo. That is, not something you say out loud on BookTube, but I am not a Jane Austen fan, and I have my reasons for that. But with Jane Austen July, I was really feeling left out because everybody is reading Jane Austen and gushing about her. So I came across this book and thought I would give it a try because it's written by a different author and it is about Jane Austen, not one of her characters. And this book is a mystery. So in the story, Jane Austen, it's towards the end of her life when she's getting pretty sick, and her sister go to a town that is known to have like healing waters. So she goes to this town to kind of, get better. And while she's there, she is staying at like a bed and breakfast, and there is a really interesting cast of characters in this story. I love all their little interactions that they have with each other. I just really got into the characters of this story. I really loved the setting. And then there is a murder in the story, and Jane has to work to figure out what happened. So I really like the mystery, although the murder part came very much towards the end. I kept wondering if it was even going to happen, because it was like 70% of the way through when there was a mystery element to the story. But that being said, I absolutely loved this book, and I will pick up more books from this author. She has a whole series. I think there's like 12 or 13 books in this series, and they're all about Jane Austen solving different crimes at different, places. So yeah, even if you are not a Jane Austen fan, which I'm probably the only one on the planet, if you don't like Jane Austen, maybe give this series a try, because it was really good. The only thing I didn't like was the author's overuse of the word countenance. And that's a big issue I have with Jane Austen. Jane Austen overuses the words amiable and agreeable. She uses those words every other sentence, and it drives me batty. And I don't know if this author did this on purpose to write similar to Jane Austen, because she used that word countenance probably 200 times in the story. I'm not even kidding. It was constant, and I'm like, please use a different word. All right, next we are going back to Carrie Stewart Parks. Because I loved Fragments of Fear so much, I wanted to read more from her, so I picked up Woman in Shadow. And this one was disappointing to me. I liked Fragments of Fear so much more. It's like night and day, the difference and how I felt about these books. By just the synopsis alone, Woman in Shadow sounds so good. But the execution of the story I did not like. It's about a woman who has PTSD, a lot of trauma from things that happened to her in the past, and she gets the chance to go kind of investigate a little bit at this ranch. I think it was in Idaho. So she's like helping out, trying to investigate some weird things that are going on at this ranch. And while she's there, a ton of earthquakes happen. There was a bunch of forest fires being set, a bunch of weird things going on, this woman in the woods who just kind of disappeared. Again, the main character inherited some dogs, so maybe the author has a thing for dogs, I'm not sure. But then there were a string of murders in this book that I didn't love. Because of my background with horror, I struggle sometimes with certain types of scenes. The way the murders were written in this book was too much for me. As I was reading it, I was like, this reminds me too much of the stuff that I used to read, and I'm not supposed to be reading this kind of thing. It made me feel very uncomfortable. It made me very uncomfortable, and it gave me the ick feeling. So I did not like how that played out. It was not like that in Fragments of Fear, though. They are very different types of books. So I definitely want to read more from her. She has a bunch of books out that sound really interesting. But since I've had one hit and one miss, I don't know what I'm going to think about the rest of them. Okay guys, that is all the books that I read in the month of July. If you've read any of these books, if you have any thoughts on them, let me know down below. And I hope I will see y'all soon. Bye.